Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being here with us. We are going to have a ball today. And, early in the call, I see that there's somebody on the line waiting. Let me go see if this person wants to speak, and then we'll get into the show. I don't want to leave somebody holding or waiting too long. So let's go ahead and take it. Rafael, are you here? Let's see. Rafael, are you here? Hello, Rafael. I don't see that you have a mic on, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and wait to see if you'll come in later, Mr. Rafael Cole. Okay. Anyhow, let's get busy. We have a great show for you today. You know, I say that every single time, but we put a whole lot of work to make sure that we have stuff for you. We want to make sure to have stuff for you. Rafael Cole, your microphone is not on. In case you want to talk to us, your microphone is not on according to what I'm seeing on the screen. All right, let me cue one other device here. We got to get it all on all our channels. So once we get it on all our channels, you'll have my 100% attention. Let's go to Bernie. All right, Bernie, are you there, Bernie? Yeah, it looked like we took care of you, Bernie. Okay, we're going to have a great show for you today, folks. Anyhow, you know what has awoken? The call-in number, let me put that on the screen for you. Or let me go ahead and pull that up as well for the call-in number. Let me go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to put it in chat so that everybody can see the call-in number right away. I'm also putting it on the screen. If you take a look at the screen, it's right there as well. But I'm pulling that call-in number to put it in the chat. There are two ways that you can reach us in the chat. You can either call by phone or you can call by computer via Zoom. There is all the information for getting us or coming on in. Anyhow, folks, how are you guys doing today? We're going to have a great show today. What's happening? The super spreader events are continuing. The super spreader events continue. Anyhow, here we go. Title of the show today, let me go ahead and pull that up. Title of the show today is Texas, the Sleeping Giant Awakens. The Sleeping Giant Awakens. The Latino vote is engaged, and Steve Schmidt calls it. And you know I love Steve Schmidt. I love Steve Schmidt. He's been doing some good stuff on he's been doing some good work. Anyway, Texas Republicans are panicking, trying to suppress the vote. Two professors' studies show an engaged Latino voter. Steve Schmidt makes his call. We always listen to our members. One called me up and had some constructive advice. I listened. I intend to listen, and as always, I do. This show has changed many times because of your implementable inputs. In other words, if you give me something that I can implement that makes sense to everybody else, you know it's going to get done. So Norman Reynolds called and said, Egberto, you know what, man? I love what you're doing, but I need you to, there are a lot of great conversation that occurs in the chat, and you know that I know that. And he said, but too often you don't give us enough time responding to the chatter in the chat. So going forward, I'll try my best that at the 45 mark, I'll try my best to be able to do that. I'm going to try to start today. So let's go ahead and go for it. Anyhow, let me get that caller coming in from 828. Come on in. How are you doing today?
Hey, Egberto, it's Hope in North Carolina.
Hey, Hope, how are you doing, my friend? Talk to me.
We got Kamala Harris in the house in Asheville.
All right. Congrats, girl. So how was that?
Well, I didn't make it over, but I did watch it live, and she did great, and she's blazing the trail, and the Trumpsters are their little paid trolls are all over Facebook saying, oh, don't elect her. And you know what? How women, okay, all you listeners out there, all the other things aside, how women can't support and why they don't support other women is beyond me. Okay? I've been on this planet for 58 years. I'm have my education. I'm a regular reader. I listen to both sides. Okay. But I'm telling you guys, I mean, the ERA hasn't even been ratified. And you need to get your head out of your butts and support Biden Harris. Okay. That's my message for the listeners. And go Harris County. I'm glad that you guys are voting.
Oh, it's good. I have something to play that you guys are going to like. But let me tell you something, Hope. I understand the mentality very well. Any particular group that is aggrieved, I've noticed any particular group that is aggrieved, they have a tendency to have some sort of a implicit loyalty to the master. You know what I mean? And I don't know why, but I mean it occurs in minority populations as well. There are terms that people have used that sort of derogatory. As far as the slave that lived in the house and the slave that live outside in the fields. There are all these connotations that show why these sort of structures have lasted so long, and it's because the enslavement is not with chains, but the enslavement is in the mind, and it's when we free. See, you are a 100% free woman. That's why you can say and speak the way you speak. You have to help liberate everybody else.
Well, I mean, I think that the Trumpster is great evidence that the banks are the government and the
Yes.
government are the banks. And, I mean, support the woman who's trying to frickin' help somebody and keep the planet from melting. I mean, I don't know what planet people are on. I mean, I'm going to have to go up with Elon Musk in the rocket, because if Trump wins, I have to call you back, because I'm definitely going to move to Panama or someplace like that.
But let me tell you, I don't think. Look, you can move to Panama, and at some time I may move back to Panama. And as I did a show with Nico House yesterday to do. He interviewed me yesterday, and his name of his show is Mi Casa es Su Casa. So let me tell you, Hope, Mi Casa es Su Casa. If you're traveling and you're in Panama and I'm in Panama, my home is your home. Feel free, okay, my friend?
Oh, thank you so much. And you're awesome. And I'm going to get off so that other people can call in and listen to the rest of the show.
Thank you so kindly. You have a great day, Hope. Anyway, folks,
All right,
we have
you
some
too,
great
Greta.
quick videos to show you today. It's going to be marvelous, as they say. Anyhow, so the first topic is now. So what Norman said, I think Norman is right, because Norman says, and let me just counter you a little bit, Brother Rudnan. Yeah, I should go behind after the show and answer more of the messages that I do. It's a lot, because it's not only on Facebook, it's on YouTube, it's all over the place that I have to tackle. So what Norman is saying is absolutely true, in that you probably need to get those topics that you can on the on air, because some people are only looking at the video, some people are only watching the podcast, and you guys have such great conversation in the feed that it's best if people can hear that as well. And it would be good also if some of you that had that great information in the feed would actually call in, because you guys are just grandiose. You guys are great. Anyhow, second topic. Donald Trump continues his super spreader rallies, lying about COVID-19 and the economy. Steve Schmidt breaks down the election. Republicans are a bar of Steve Schmidt breaks down the election. Republicans are a bar of the part of the Biden coalition. He explains why he ensures a likely Biden win. Texas sleeping giant is waking up, and Republicans trying unsuccessfully to suppress the vote. Then we have an interview with Dr. James McCann and Dr. Michael Jones-Correa to discuss Latino engagement in politics. Latino engagement in politics. That's all right, Michael. Your texting is wonderful, brother. And by the way, let me see. Did you tell us how you're doing? Ear, nose, and throat doctor recommends CT scan. My insurance approved it today. Going tomorrow. Very likely will miss your show. Hey, we need you, Michael. Meantime, let's see if a combination of those medicines will work. You will be fine, Michael. You will be fine. Anyhow, let's go to the first video. Here we go with Donald Trump, Mr. Super Spreader. The unhinged Donald Trump continues to have these super spreader rallies. He's doing one in North Carolina. I don't know when, but they're expecting 15 to 30,000 people. Think about that spreader event. think about what he's going to do to North Carolina. He's going to spread the virus throughout by having these big rallies. He needs to be held accountable. That is pretty much should be called voluntary manslaughter. But check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
The president tonight appeared before his 12th rally in 7 days. Tonight, as you'll hear in a moment, he told the audience with a straight face and to applause that the pandemic is ending and we're crushing the virus. Of course, neither is true as the virus continues to crush large portions of our country. Tonight's rally was in Erie, PA. The First Lady was supposed to be on the trip but canceled because she is suffering from lingering symptoms from the coronavirus. From the start of tonight's event in the cold and on an airport tarmac, the president sounded like he really didn't want to be there.
I didn't need this. I didn't need this. Although we're having a good time and we're doing a good job. No, but it's true. If they did a good job, I wouldn't have run.
Once again, the mostly unmasked crowd was tightly packed as the pandemic continues its accelerated and uncontrolled churn across our country. Just yesterday, our country saw nearly 65,000 more positive cases. That's now fueling a spike in hospitalizations. Numerous reports out tonight say the rise in cases could soon push some hospital systems to the breaking point. Tonight, the president described his version of this crisis.
We're rounding the turn on the pandemic, 56%, and it's a record. Epic job growth, safe vaccines that quickly end the pandemic. It's ending. Normal life, that's all we want. You know what we want? Normal life. Normal life will finally resume.
Now, a humane, moral president wouldn't lie to his people about the status of the pandemic. He would not, because he wants to keep them safe. A humane, moral president wouldn't say, come on out in droves to adore me. Come on out in droves to praise me. He would say, stay home. I care more about your safety than for you to come out. Show your support at the ballot box. You don't need to be here praising me. Show your support at the ballot box, but he would have it no other way. Come out and praise me. That is what our president wants. Voluntary manslaughter. Lies, he's lying to his people, and they are there for him because they believe him. Folks, we have a lot of work to do on them. Anyway, folks, so you can see this guy's like a preacher, right? Oh, come serve me, come serve me. Anyhow, Steve Schmidt, though, doesn't have much hope for him. Check this out. Steve Schmidt is at it again. Well, actually, he's not at it. He's just given an account of the race, and in all practical purposes, in Steve Schmidt's mind, I think he thinks it's over, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. But remember, folks, you got to go out there and vote. Make sure your vote makes polls be realized. Check this out.
Steve Schmidt, I want you to take on a couple of these things here. A winning coalition that includes two former chairmen of the Republican Party, as well as, I think Tim Alberta breaks some new ground in his reporting today, and he's been all over the Republican slide into the muck that is Trumpism. Where do you think this race is, and how does the Republican piece of it fit into the coalition you're seeing behind Biden?
Well, Rasmussen talked about the fact that right now the lead that Joe Biden is enjoying is made up in large measure by Republicans. Steve Bannon talked about the fact that he called it the Bannon line, that if you had 4 or 5% of Republicans who would cross over and support Joe Biden, it would be impossible for Donald Trump to win. So by no means are disaffected Republicans the majority of Joe Biden's base, but are an important component of it. It's an American coalition. And I think the hangover of everybody's surprise from 2016 is that the size, the durability, the depth of Biden's coalition has just been constantly understated, generally speaking, in the media for this race, because no one wants to be wrong twice in an election with Donald Trump. But Biden has an outsized lead. It's as big a lead as there's been in the modern era of politics, certainly this century, at this point in the race. And so when you look at Donald Trump's comportment, you look at the rallies, you look at what's going on, you look at all the totality of the stories, this is a campaign that's in collapse. It's pulling down its TV buys, it's out of money, it's squandered $1 billion. Donald Trump's the first candidate in history to spend $1 billion and make a situation worse. But the entire campaign is built on a premise that he's done a good job for the last 4 years. And I think the American people have a really good, strong understanding of what a disaster we're in. And then we're in this disaster because of the incompetent who sits behind the Resolute desk.
You can't argue with that. It's clear who he thinks is going to win. And it's clear also, I don't know if you heard within the words, and it's something that you guys have heard me say before, and that is I think what the polls are actually showing are an undercount. A lot of people that are out there that I've never seen Texas react the way Texas is reacting, and Georgia and many other states. Folks, there is something. I believe we are going to see something very, very big on election night, fairly early on that Tuesday. But folks, you must go out there and vote in overwhelming numbers. What we must see is a repudiation of Trumpism, which has been a cancer, which has been an evil on America that we have not seen since its inception. Because again, remember how we were born. Again, go out there and vote, and let's make sure to move America a few more steps from the backslide that it has done over the last 4 years. Now, folks, and if you doubt that Republicans don't realize the bind that they're in, including here in Texas, this next report that I'm going to show you, listen to it. Listen to what they're doing. Listen to what they're trying. This is desperation, but you know what? It's over. It's over. And it's not coming back because we have changed what this country was. In fact, we're moving from a country that abused the many to a country that supports the all. Check this out. Texas is the sleeping giant. And I've been wondering, we've always said Texas is not a red state. Texas is not a purple state. Texas is a blue state because the average Texan is a progressive, except for those on the borderlines. And let me tell you, the sort of voting that we're seeing in Texas now corroborates that. Check this out.
In an election year where how you cast your ballot could mean putting your health at risk, states have looked to creative voting measures to get people safely to the polls. But in some places, the expanding voting access has come with increased pushback. The clerk of Harris County, Texas, the county that includes Houston and over 2 million registered voters, has asked the Texas Secretary of State for assurance that the votes that are cast in the county's drive-in voting initiative, where you can actually cast your ballot from inside your car, will count come Election Day. This comes after an election guidance letter published last week by the Texas Attorney General cautioned officials against drive-in voting, saying, quote, COVID-19 does not render a voter physically unable to cast a ballot inside a polling place without assistance. This is not the first challenge to drive-in voting. Last week, a judge dismissed a lawsuit from the Texas Republican Party that attempted to halt the program altogether. Joined now by Houston County Clerk Chris Hollins. I'm trying to understand the downside of allowing drive-in voting, and I can't figure it out. Do you know what the real issue is with the Texas Attorney General?
The real issue, Chuck, is that people are voting. We've seen over 800,000 voters here in Harris County alone make their voices heard at the polls, and that number seems to scare the Attorney General. Drive-through voting is completely legal under the Texas Election Code. It takes place inside a movable structure, which the Texas Election Code clearly contemplates. But we're asking the Secretary of State to come out of the shadows here and make clear to Texas voters that their votes are going to be counted.
You're asking for the Secretary of State for some clarification. Did you view the AG's letter as more of an intimidation tactic than an actual legal notice?
Well, it's certainly a threat. And these cases filed by the Republican Party are absurd, but because so many votes are at stake, we have to take them seriously. And the Texas Secretary of State has a statutory duty to advise and assist county election officials on election matters. And our offices have worked very well together throughout this election season until conspicuously they went silent in the past few days.
Did you get pre-clearance for this drive-through voting option?
We did. I mean, we've looked at a number of opportunities to expand access to the polls for Harris County voters. But the Texas Secretary of State's office made clear to us that the structure that we were using would be okay. And in fact, the state director of elections has testified under oath that drive-through voting is okay as long as all voters have equal access to drive-through voting centers. And so we've certainly held up our end of the bargain. Voters love it. About 10% of Harris County voters have cast their votes at drive-through voting centers. But now the state Republican Party, the Harris County Republican Party, and now it seems the Attorney General are trying to disenfranchise those voters.
Have they given any sort of other rationale? They said it might not count because they said it doesn't meet this disability requirement. Is there some phantom fear of voter fraud here? I mean, is there something I'm missing here that would make this fraught with peril?
You're not missing anything. The check-in process at these voting centers is exactly the same as it is everywhere. You show a valid voter ID that is checked and confirmed against the voter rolls, and then you're allowed to vote on the same voting machine that everyone else uses. You just happen to be doing so conveniently and safely. And so voters are thrilled at this opportunity, and so many voters have appreciated the way that we've allowed them to vote safely. The fear here is that voters are voting. That is what our Attorney General doesn't like to see, and clearly the Texas Republican Party shares it.
If these votes get deemed illegal or against regulation and somehow you're told you have to change your way. If I'm live in Houston and I did this drive-in voting and I'm watching this segment, I'm going, oh no, are they going to throw out my ballot?
We're confident that it was well within the bounds of the law, that every vote that is cast through drive-through voting will be counted like every other vote. And again, this is a third lawsuit, but because so many votes are at stake, we are taking it seriously. We have filed multiple briefs now with the Texas Supreme Court, and we expect that the Texas Supreme Court will do its job and uphold the sanctity of these voters' votes here in Harris County. We look down on efforts to scare voters, to confuse voters. And anything like that, we're not going to stand for. And the voters have made that clear by coming out in record numbers. They don't like to be messed with. They wanted to have their voices heard. And they're doing so, again, in record here in Harris County in November of 2020.
We spend a lot. Absolutely so. So you see what's happening. The sleeping tiger is starting to wake up. We think it's going to be completely awake by November 3rd. But if it's not, no matter what the case is, it's waking up. And here is the deal. They are so scared. They are putting in all kinds of restrictions to try to slow down the vote. Now, they can't win this one, but what they can do is put the fear of people, maybe I shouldn't go vote because I don't know if my vote's going to count. Folks, everybody go out there, whether you go in the lines or whether you go in the car. If you can go to the grocery store, you can vote. You can stand in that line and vote, or you can go in your car and vote here in Harris County, but make your voices heard, because until we do that, to show that what has been done in this country for all these years have simply been minority rule, let's finally allow America to see what America stands for. Let's make sure to show what America really stands for. Real America, not a false or a facade. Anyhow, for those who kind of doubt what we're saying, this is today's poll. I have the other one from Impact. I get all these polls in every day. And right now in Texas, we're at 47-47, Biden and Trump. And you know what happens in elections where they normally break? They normally break for the incumbent. When you find that the person is not over 50%, the incumbent is not over 50%, you got to watch out. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. Anyhow, so that's where we're at. Texas 47-47. But where they have their hopes pinned, it's Pennsylvania. Look at Pennsylvania, 51-43. Let me put that a little so you can see it a little better. 51-43. 51-43. And check that out. So Biden is at over 51%. A lot of votes are already in, which also means that he has to take votes away from Biden. So folks, you got to keep going out there every single day. Every single day. Talk to your friends, your family, your relatives. We don't just want a win. We want a repudiation. It is imperative that we get an actual repudiation so people can understand, so the rest of the world. This is not a vote just for America. This is the rest of the world to restore our dignity around the world, to stop us from being the laughing stock around the world. When we go across the world now, yeah, look at them people who elected Donald Trump. Look at those guys who elected that dude that doesn't know basic arithmetic. Look, they elected that guy that is a laughing stock of the rest of the world. Can you believe they elected that guy to hold the atomic bomb codes? That's what the rest of the world think about us. Let's redeem ourselves. Then we can ask for atonement, right? Because we made a hell of a mistake, and the world is paying the price for it. This pandemic that has hit all over the world, in the days of Obama, even in the days of George Bush number 2, George Bush number 1, Clinton, these guys, when these things were about, they took care of it as presidents. We didn't agree with them all the time on the way they did it, but they took care of it. Then we elected a complete, you guys know what, and this is what we got. He killed over 220,000 Americans. And do I have any qualms in saying he killed them? No, he murdered them. This president, that's what he did. With his lies, his incompetence, and even now he's killing more as he has these super spreader events. Who cares about people and exposes them to death like he has? Who cares about people and exposes them to what he's going to expose them to? Now, just before, we're going to do the interview that we have with the two professors, the two doctors, in a minute, but you know we're at the halfway mark, so I have to do my little pitch. Give me 2 minutes here. Please, folks, you see that book on the screen? It's called It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. Please go ahead and get that book. Here's the link directly on Amazon to that book. And if you want to, you can also get that book at our store. If you go to our store, of course, you're taking out the middleman. That means not only are you taking out the middleman, but I will send you the book autographed with a few other goodies in the book, something like this, with a sticker that has, with our bumper sticker, all that good stuff I normally send out with the book. So if you order the book directly at store, at politicsdoneright.com/store, I'll send you a few goodies in the box. If you want to just go ahead and get the e-copy, you can go to Amazon. I gave you the link there, or you can just look up Egberto Willis at Amazon, or the name of the book at Amazon. So please go ahead. By the way, getting this book helps support this show. But there are other ways to support this show. Please go ahead and click that join button. Please click on that join button and become a part of our posse. If you hit that join button, it's very, look, next to nothing. It's like saying, Egberto, I like what you do. Here's a cup of coffee. That helps us. We need hundreds, thousands of those to keep us continually viable. If you do that, we'll be happy. So if you're on YouTube, just click the join button. If you're not on YouTube, you can still join our YouTube posse. We have little things that are going to be coming up for that. Just go to politicsdoneright.com, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, and I just added that. So if you're not on YouTube right now, but you're on Twitch or Facebook, or what's the other one that we're on, or Periscope, just click on that button, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, and you can join our YouTube posse. Of course, you can always support us at our Patreon location, which is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, or you can support us via PayPal by going to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. Thank you so kindly. Now let's go ahead and move on. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the interview. Here is an interview with the two professors. Here we go. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. We're here with Dr. James McCann, Professor of Political Science at Purdue University, and Dr. Michael Jones-Correa, Professor of Political Science at UPenn. Men, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look, one of the issues that's been out there in the ethos is that the Latino vote has been taken for granted for a long time. And that has a lot to do with maybe the Latino vote not showing up at the polls. Now, here comes Donald Trump, and Donald Trump completely disparages the community. As I understand, James, you have some thoughts on that and what the effect it will actually have on the voting performance of Latinos this cycle. What's your thoughts?
Well, we both have some thoughts, Humberto, but I can jump in and say that, yeah, I mean, with the Latino vote based on current polling, maybe about a quarter to 30% might be somewhat favorably disposed towards Trump. So the bulk of the population is certainly not very supportive of Trump. The big question, as you suggest, is voter turnout. What we picked up on in our surveys is a fair amount of engagement, and other people have mentioned that as well. So that would bode well for pretty good turnout this November. Michael, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, no, our book, which just came out, Holding Fast, makes an argument that Latino immigrants reacted to Trump's candidacy and election in 2016 by not going underground, but rather by becoming more engaged, more civically engaged on a number of measures, even if as they were increasingly unhappy with the direction of the country and the direction things were taking, but they became more active in a number of different ways by everything from joining meetings to attending protests. And so that bodes well for their engagement in 2020. And you already saw signs of this in 2018.
Now, Dr. Manuel Pastor is under the belief right now that while much of that may be true, that the Biden campaign has probably neglected quite a bit the Latino population. Now, look, I am both Black and Latino, and I can tell you that on the Black side, I see a lot of engagement from Biden in these different communities. And I must say that I've also noticed not as much in front of the Latino community. In fact, he had a faux pas when he said, "Oh, Black folks are a bit more unified or in concert than Latinos." So I understood what he meant, because after all, the Latino community is very vast. Do you think that he is missing something that by not being able to engage these communities where they are? Florida, we have Cubanos. In the Southwest, we have mostly Mexicans. In the I-95 corridor, we have a lot of Puerto Ricanos. What are your thoughts, Michael?
So I don't think that he's wrong necessarily. I think that the Biden campaign was slow getting off the mark. So, keep in mind that Biden really didn't have much of a campaign structure, I will say.
True.
Even as he was winning the nomination, and his campaign has come together really toward the end of this cycle, and a lot of money coming in, and that's important because he is now beginning to spend that money. And so I'm now beginning to hear about regional Latino directors, state directors. So there are now people being hired on the ground. There is now more outreach on the ground, but it's also clear to me that this is playing a catch-up game, and he is sort of behind where you would expect.
Now, James, don't you think a lot of that has to do with, I was talking to a few candidates here in Houston, and I was really upset with a lot of the ads that they had out there, because I believe they don't go for the jugular the way, let's say, Republicans would. Now, that said, I think part of the problem as well is that these campaigns work with a lot of, and I'm not going to call you guys see how things work, but a lot of people in these universities don't know what's happening in the barrios. They don't know what's happening in Appalachia. They don't know what's happening in the ghettos. So, and generally speaking, they don't put the monies in those communities and the leaders in those communities. Do you think that both of these campaigns in this case, James, or do you think they're doing the right thing as far as how they're dispersing these?
Yeah. No, I mean, to echo a point that Michael made a minute ago, Biden is playing catch up. Right now, though, he's pretty well flush with cash, and so in the home stretch, there's going to be more and more investment. But yeah, the kinds of places you're mentioning, yeah, they have been undermobilized, and that's a sort of historic story. It's not just with Biden, but traditionally we could fault the American party system. Actually, in our polling, we found that Latino immigrants tend to tilt towards the Democrats, and that's not exactly front page news, but the partisanship tends to be rather thin. And I think a lot of that has to do with the choices that the party makes, from election cycle to election cycle.
Well, go ahead,
Yeah, jump in there a
Dr.
little bit to say that parties historically, as Jay was mentioning, have reached out to people who are already engaged. So if you voted before, then they contact you. But if you're a new voter and part of a new electorate, immigrant voters, young voters, voters who haven't historically voted in the past, or kind of weak partisans, as Jay was mentioning, then parties are much less likely to reach out to you. And this has meant kind of historic disinvestment in the Latino community and the immigrant community more broadly. The parties, both parties, not just Biden, have not done outreach to these new voters.
Let me tell you, if I could
go ahead,
check,
please.
Yeah. One additional thing to add to that is that the political parties, I think, could be faulted for playing such a short game, right? That they sort of come alive during campaigns to serve the immediate needs of the candidates. And it's sort of, once the election is over, poof, okay, the parties sort of go completely dormant. So it would help them, I believe, if they played a somewhat longer game and cultivated these emerging constituencies.
That's prescient. I mean, that is an absolute fact. Now, I tell you what's interesting, though, right? You can take that exactly and move it on to what's occurring today. Pennsylvania, Florida. We all know that we have to bring a whole lot of people into the fold, as both of you have just explained. We look at Pennsylvania, we see in the case of Republicans, they have a huge advantage in new registrations since April. We look at Florida, we have the same thing. Donald Trump played an interesting game. There are not a lot of voters that are, I shouldn't say a lot that are Republican, but they know how to go ahead and hunt them. And part of doing that is exactly what you're talking about, and that is identifying those people. And I've started to, I don't know about Republicans in general, but I can tell you about the Trump campaign in particular that is actually hunting people. And if you take a look at what they've done, it seems like they've done that. But we want to talk about your book, Holding Fast, Resilience and Civic Engagement Among Latino Immigrants. Who wants to tell me the tenet of the book in the first place?
All right. Well, Michael gave a very nice thumbnail sketch a few minutes ago, so I'm going to amplify on that. The sort of dominant storyline is that Latino immigrants following the 2016 election exhibited, as one might expect, an awful lot of anxiety about what's coming next and a great deal of disappointment. That was sort of a dominant thread in media coverage following the 2016 election. So we measure that through surveys, okay? But we also find a fair amount of anger, understandable anger. And so the sort of mixture of disappointment, anxiety, and anger, that mixture it's all a sort of powerful driver of political engagement. So the big question is, given these reactions, will you go underground and sort of go into duck and cover mode and even reconsider whether you want to remain in the US over the long run? Or is there resilience? Is there constructive pushback? And we find much more evidence for the latter. We find that the immigrants in our study expressed a deep loss of faith in government institutions under Trump, but at the same time, they did not lose faith in America on the whole. There's just as much trust in other Americans, just as much patriotism. There's no deeper desire to, kind of leave the country and return to the country of birth. And there is a considerable amount of engagement in real political activities, all the way from protest activities to everyday kind of pedestrian sorts of activities, like going to school board meetings and things like that. So we take that as a good sign of kind of the ongoing incorporation of immigrants into US democracy.
Now, were we talking just documented immigrants or undocumented immigrants as well?
Everybody. So our sample has, so these are all first generation immigrants, people who have migrated to the US themselves. So it includes people who have naturalized, people who are legal permanent residents or green card holders, and undocumented residents as well. For all of these groups, we found that the patterns of holding fast, remaining engaged, remains true even if people were undocumented. People who are citizens are engaged at higher levels than the undocumented, but everyone stays engaged.
You know what was interesting? I went to Arizona. Was it Arizona? I'm sorry, I went to Nevada to work the polls with Bernie Sanders, and I stood outside of different Latino supermarkets, and what we found most amazing was that most of these Latinos that were coming out were not engaged in the body politic, but when we made the case to them, they immediately wanted to vote. They felt like, oh, you mean I can actually have control? And it wasn't like sitting in front of a Safeway or something. This was a Latino market, and they were ready to talk, and they would tell you stories, and that's a feeling that I got. Did you capture did you capture that kind of Latin community, or did you capture, let's say, the Latin community that was already integrated into the US?
Yeah, well, we tried to capture as comprehensively as possible the entire Latino immigrant community. And so we have, many people in the sample have lived in the United States for decades, okay? But we also have some relative newcomers in the sample. And that was an important thing that we wanted to investigate. How do these two different kinds of groups vary in terms of their reactions? And one of the things we found is that they don't vary a whole lot, right? It's a sort of one size fits all kind of framework that we have here in the book, that even immigrants who are rather well established in the United States still felt as much kind of disappointment and anger and anxiety about where politics was going, and they were just as sort of engaged because of that.
Now, one of the things that people are worried about when it comes to voting, et cetera, is that a lot of Latino households are mixed. In other words, they may have an undocumented person within that household. And because they want to attract the least attention, have you found that that could possibly affect whether they vote or not, whether they participate in the census or not?
Yeah, so this is what social scientists call mixed status households, which
right.
is a fancy way of saying what you're saying. And so one of the interesting things we found was that not only were people feeling a sense of threat and anxiety for themselves, but they were feeling a sense of threat and anxiety for their people who were close to them, friends, families, loved ones. And if, when we asked them, are you fearful or afraid of the possibility that someone close to you will be deported, people who felt that fear for people close to them were also more likely to be civically engaged. So there was a link between the sense of threat for people who they loved and their willingness to become active in civic life in the United States. So to answer your question, even if you're a citizen, even if you were U.S. born, we speculate that sense of anxiety and fear for people close to you will engage people in American politics.
Now, in your analysis, did you break down? Did you do the breakdown based on Biden's confusion? In other words, that Latinos are so diverse and may also have diverse attitudes towards politics.
Yeah, in our analysis, we do pick up on a lot of the diversity with respect to partisanship. We compare and contrast, Mexicans who were uniquely singled out in so many ways versus non-Mexicans to see if there are any differences there. And actually, we find relatively few differences. That's another
really?
interesting finding between Mexicans and non-Mexicans in terms of their sort of fearfulness of politics, the anger that is expressed, the disappointment in the country. So, as I say, to hark back to what was mentioned a few minutes ago, it's a sort of almost one size fits all, or it's a very encompassing kind of conclusion that we have that Latinos across the board tended as a group to really react negatively the way we pick up on and to kind of demonstrate in response that resilience and engagement.
Well, I really like the title of the book, Resilience and Civic Engagement. That is sort of what we promote here. That is what we are into. Now, to end this, what I'd like, for you to do is tell me something that I didn't ask that you wanted me to ask about, not only your book, but about what's happening right now in our politics.
Well, one thing that Jay mentioned, which I'd like to pick up on, is the story where we found is a national story, and that we thought there might be more differences, say, between residents living in California and residents living in, say, states like Arizona. So California has a reputation for being a very welcoming state for immigrants, and Arizona a very unwelcoming state. And what we actually found is there are remarkably, again, few differences. So if you're an immigrant living in Arizona or California, you react much in the same way to Trump's election and Trump's presidency. You feel threatened and you're resilient. And this is kind of interesting. And to think about that, there's a nationalization of politics taking place, which is true for immigrants as it is for many other Americans.
James?
Boy, what to add to that? Yeah, that's. Let me say that. To maybe expand on the thinness of Democratic partisanship. Okay, what we found in the book is that while immigrants who have a party affiliation will say that they're Democrats by a ratio of say maybe 4 or 5 to 1, there still is an awful lot of uncertainty out there about the political parties. When we ask questions about which party best represents the interests of Latinos or immigrants in general, or women and children and business owners, the typical response is often a shoulder shrug. They're not really sure. Okay, so let me just say, to amplify on what we mentioned before, I think the political parties really need to work a bit harder, right, to reach out to these new constituents.
That's a very good point and a good place to end. Dr. James McCann, Professor of Political Science at Purdue University, and Dr. Michael Jones-Correa, Professor of Political Science at UPenn, authors of Holding Fast, Resilience and Civic Engagement Among Latino Immigrants. We'll have the book posted at the website as well as on the lead. Thank you so kindly for having been here with Politics Done Right.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I sure enjoyed the interview. Let me put the telephone number on the call like I told you now. Let me go ahead and head to the chat. See what we're doing. Let's see. The Bridge says, Bridge MCP, Politics Done Right with Egberto Willis. I am not sure about this. Here where I live, which is huge Trump area, we have many Latinos. They are put down, some beaten, many undocumented, yet they do not follow the news. Many are uneducated, and those born here are more for their country than this country. And yes, they like Trump. They believe the conspiracy theories. That amazes me. Look, let me tell you, I get that. I get that. Here's the beginning. Or here's the reality. If you take a look at how people's minds work, right? You'll see that those that just came over here, they'll still have that affinity for their country, but that doesn't mean anything towards America itself. Now, what they do suffer is the same enchained minds that we have, right? That women have, that black people have, that Latinos have, right? Because anytime you are on the lower side of the pecking order, the only reason you can remain there is if your mind is enchained not to realize that you are the powerful one. And that is what we have to work on. Why I am doing this kind of program to say we all can be empowered. Because it is a lack of empowerment of minorities. It's a lack of empowerment by women. It's a lack of empowerment than the indigent, than the disabled. We have to realize this country is non-existent without us all. And as such, let's remember that we should partake the same way as anybody else in this country. And once we get that, what you just said, Briege, what Hope talked about before as well, we'll be able to take care of those particular issues. All right, let me see what else I got here. My worry after Biden wins the election is the movements going on right now over police brutality and global warming stall out. No. The reason Black Lives Matter is not in the streets right now, the reason a whole lot of these organizations are not in the streets right now, is because they are doing a hiatus so that Trump cannot use that meme that he's putting out there. Oh, American streets are burning. They're burning up. They're looting. We got to get that away. So we played the smart move. Not on the streets right now, but after this election, there's a lot of demands that are going to Biden. We will have Biden execute lest he has one term, or rather, less Democrats have one term. So what about systemic racism? One of my friends in another chat room is saying, what about systemic racism? It's all good and well. But systemic racism can only occur with, and I'm going to name this term, Uncle Tom's enablers. Enablers. Women can only lose their rights because there are enablers. There is systemic things. But you can't have a minority control a system unless we acquiesce to them. And too many of us acquiesce to that. So yes, systemic racism is real. But to counter systemic racism, we can't fall into the trap that we are the corporate shrills. We are the maintainers of the legal system. We're the maintainers of the, what is the word that I like to use all of the times? You guys hear me use it all the time. We are the enforcers. We are the guardians of the gate. We are the guardians of the gate. Somebody also tell me, BS. Okay, we got to talk about that some more, but I'm running out of time, so we can talk about it a little bit more. But anyhow, let me see what other messages I have here. Bear with me. Wow, you guys are loaded up. Jesus. Okay, Brian G says, vote early or Republican Governor Abbott banned straight tickets. They are so scared of a blue wave. I actually enjoyed voting against each and every one of the 60 ones. I get you, brother. I get you. I did that too. In the past, I never voted straight ticket. Okay. Now, recently, with the cabal that we had, I was forced to do that, right? And I continue to do that, and I did it this time as well. All right, let's see. Come on, guys. Let me see what else is here. I can't answer all of them, but what I'll do is I'll go back to it. As my friend says, I got to keep up with what I am doing, so you guys have got it. I will. Para ver qué más está aquí. Vamos a ver. Hey, Rudnan, I hope you're taking care of yourself. Hey, Hope, thank you for calling in. That was a good message that you had for the rest of us. And I love that you brought up the woman issue, Hope. You brought up an important issue with women, and I hope I answered that the way, in a manner that women didn't find condescending, or that black people didn't find condescending, or that Latinos didn't find condescending. But a lot of times when we're putting our words out there, sometimes because it is true, it has a condescending twang if you're not going to do something about it immediately. Michael Rodden says, Egberto, if you have stuff to talk about, you can get back to the comments after the show. Yes, sir. Okay. Let's see. I got another one down here. Lee Grant says, Breach MCP. Either way, we'll get violence. You are out of control. There's gonna be no violence. All of that is the fear mongering up to the thing. There will be sporadic violence likely, but we won't have like some sort of a revolution. And I am more concerned if it's a stolen election for Trump, what will happen than for the Proud Boys to just go into the corner that they belong in. Okay, I got to welcome all my peeps. Bridge MCP, welcome aboard. Lady Dina and husband, welcome aboard. Michael Rudnin, welcome aboard. Lee Grant, welcome aboard. Mike Cisak, welcome aboard. Para ver quién más está aquí. Tank 28, welcome aboard. TYTA, welcome aboard. Let's see. Oh, wow. It's a lot of messages. AVQ, welcome aboard. Madre mia, madre mia, madre mia. Okay, where we go? Brian G, welcome aboard. Mike, welcome aboard. Let's see. Tank 28228. We have 2 tanks? You mean I'm going to have to deal with a tank on Twitch and a tank on YouTube? All right, I'll do it. Still love you, man. Michael Cisak, you know I still love you too, brother. You guys not on the right side of history, but you'll come back. You'll be fine. All right, let's see. Who else? I know I missed some. If I missed Nanette Bird Smith, welcome aboard. If I missed you, just throw something to the bottom. Robert Greco, welcome aboard. Daniel Ledo, welcome aboard. Who else is here? Who else is here? Wow. And by the way, folks, I can only see the messages in the main Facebook page as well as Twitch, Periscope, and YouTube. If you put it in any of the places where we share, I won't see those particular messages unless I go over there. So bear with me a second on that. Let's see who else. Jesus Christ? Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Let's see. A few messages came in. Let me see if there's anyone else that I need to. Probably the same. Yes to all of them. Well, thank you, Briege. I'm so touched. All right, folks on YouTube, if you want to become a part of our YouTube posse, hit that join button and become. Remember, it's just a cup of coffee that you're getting for Politics Done Right. Hey, isn't it worth it as we are changing the world? Come on now, you know that's what we're doing. Anyhow, let's go ahead and see what else. Please go ahead and get the book. I mean, it'll really help you speak. You know, the reviews are pretty good. I was on a show yesterday with Nico House. And Nico House did a piece on the same kind of policies we were talking about on the book. So check that out. Here's the link to go get the book at Amazon. But if you really want to call out the middleman, you can go ahead and get the book at politicsdoneright.com/store. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/store. Here is that link. Now, and please consider becoming patrons. We have really slowed down on patrons. I don't know. We need our patrons now. Go to politicsdoneright.com/patron. That's the list there. And of course, there's always PayPal. Go to, and here's the link to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. Folks, I know you guys have many other places that you have the option to go to. The internet is vast. The internet is huge. I am simply thankful that you guys have the wherewithal to come out here and be with Politics Done Right. We have a lot more that we intend. Remember, this election is only the beginning. It is only the beginning. We have a lot more to do after the election. In fact, the hardest work comes after our landslide win, because everybody's going to be looking at Biden, and they are going to deserve a piece of the action too, a piece of the win. The Republicans that are supporting Biden, we can't just throw them to the curb. We have to listen to them now. They're going to be part of this landslide. This is what we've been always talking about. But we cannot forget the progressive wing. The progressive wing is the preeminent wing, people within this movement. And we will get Medicare for all eventually. We will get the Green New Deal. I mean, when you hear conservatives not calling it Green New Deal, but using other words, you know, because it's a job creator, we will get the Green New Deal. We will get all of these policies, bar none, but it requires us staying engaged. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out! We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.